As the world's possibly first exotic pet chef, I'm going to show you how to make your diet for your lizard. Okay, the things you're going to need is into two sections. So first of all, if your lizard happens to be an omnivore, which means it eats vegetables as well as insects or meat, you're going to need things like some curly kale here, some corn, carrot, got some shallots here as well. You can also use anything that happens to be a little bit, on the green side. Wash your vegetables first. Now, of course, organic would be preferably the best, but we can't always get that, so make sure you thoroughly wash your vegetables. Now, on the other side, we have our crickets or locusts. We also have our waxworms, and we have our mealworms. Now, mealworms and crickets are good for a staple, but your waxworms, I would just feed them as a little bit of a treat personally, because they can be quite fatty. Now, to go with these, we have fish food, we have bran as well, and all importantly, we have our vitamin supplements here, and the calcium as well. Now, this is very, very important for your lizard, especially if you have ones like bearded dragons. The reason for this being is that lizards are quite solar powered, you could say, whereas they rely on the sunlight for their heat, but also they use the sunlight to process vitamin D3 and calcium into their bodies. So, because we've got them in captivity, even though we do have the the UV light, we still need to supplement it because it's just not as good as the sun. So let's start. We'll start with the vegetables. Now, you want to feed them fresh vegetables every single day. So we just loosely chop them up, like so. We're going to arrange it on a flat dish like this. So loosely chop up your kale. Then we've got our shallots. Some people call them spring onions, depending on what country you're in. Like so. Now, depending on the size of your lizard, you might want to chop them up quite fine. And then your corn, I usually find it easier if you cut it down like this. So we'll just do a little bit for now. Oh, I'm making a mess. Move that out the way. Okay, now your carrot. They tend to sometimes not to like their carrot, but it is very good for them. So we want them to eat it. So I find that if I grate it, then they don't really have a choice. Grate it up there. Okay, give it a good mix around, like so. Now take your spray bottle with some bottled water in it and give it a nice spray. Keep it nice and moist. Okay, now this can be offered to them like this in the enclosure. When you do put it in the enclosure, put it in the cool end of the enclosure. Don't put it in the hot end because it'll just dry up and be all smelly and horrible before long. Remember, replace it every single day as well, so it stays nice and fresh. Okay, now to the live food and what to do. We're going to start with the mealworms. Now, take the mealworms that you want to feed in the next couple of days out of their enclosure. And then add to their bran, so they already have some bran in there. If not, add some more bran in, because that's what they normally eat. And then take your vitamin supplement and add just usually about a pinch to every 25 mealworms does the job. But if you're, just to be on the safe side, just read the instructions on the bottle. So add like so. Give them a bit of a shake. Okay, Now we want to leave these for about a day before we feed them. Now the crickets. The same again. Take the ones you're going to feed for the next day or two. So normally crickets, what you would normally feed them is usually some greens they like to eat. So if you are housing a lot of crickets and you're feeding them on a regular basis, give them a couple of leaves. Now the ones that we've taken out, the 24-hour to 48-hour before we're going to feed the lizards, we want to give them some supplement. Now this is called gut loading. Now I usually give them just a pinch of fish food and also a pinch of supplement as well. So we add like so. Now we leave those for, like I said, 24 to 48 hours. Now the ones we have prepared, okay, so these have been gut loaded and they're ready to go. So what we want to do, we've got our jar here with some ventilation in the top. Now here comes the fun part. We have to take the selection that's going to be used for this day's feed out of their enclosure here, without them all escaping. And we want to put them into the jar, like so. I think we can add a bit more in there, you know. Come on. Don't worry, they're not going to bite you. Oh, we've got an escapee. In. Right. We have them in there. Now we take our calcium powder, so we've already done the supplement, so that can go to the side because we don't want to overdo it with the supplement. Our calcium powder, we take a pinch of calcium powder, place it in there, and this is called dusting. And we give them a little bit of a shake, not too much. Now you have to make sure that you feed them to the lizards straight away before they actually manage to clean it all off. And they're ready to give them to the lizards. Find out if your lizard is carnivorous, which means it eats meat, or if it's omnivorous, which means it eats both vegetables and meat, which usually means insects. Now if it eats insects and you're going to keep them at home in larger quantities, you have to look after them just like you would your lizard, because you know the saying, you are what you eat. So buy an enclosure that's quite large for your crickets with a well ventilated lid and make them a good home. So you usually buy them in containers like this, so when you take them home, tip them out, leave them in their cardboard sort of hidey holes, like so. You can tip them out, it won't hurt them. And then give them plenty of vegetables they can eat. I would give them quite large vegetables because if they don't eat it, you want to replace it every day so it stays nice and fresh. You don't want to leave old smelly vegetables in there. And then give them a very, very, very light spray of water. You don't want to drown them, they can drown very easily. Make sure the lid is snapped shut. This is so they don't escape. The last thing you want is for them to escape, and at night when you're just about asleep, you hear this cricket making this noise, and there you are until 1 in the morning with the flashlight trying to find the thing under the bed, swearing and cursing. Keep them in a nice warm area, and you'll have very happy crickets and then very happy lizards. you.